Deusdedith Ishengoma, a senior research scientist from the National Institute for Medical Research in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. When I came to ASLP, that was 2016, I remember. 2016, I presume, or 15. By then, I had been in research for over 15 years, and I attended so many workshops. I actually stopped counting. And so my expectations were the same workshops. You go in the workshops, you have PowerPoint presentations, you have presenters with PowerPoints coming in, presenting, making presentations for an hour, and you are there listening, and some are boring and some are not. Those were the kind of workshops I used to, and that's what I was expecting. But when I came to ASLP, to my surprise, and I've heard many people say about it, ASLP has a different approach. And the way the workshop is conducted is completely not normal, but very innovative. The workshop, in my opinion, has been so exceptional, and I've never had any other workshop of the same nature. So it completely turned my expectations and my experience upside down. A big turning point. When I came to SLP, I had been appointed to lead one of the centers of my institute, which is located a bit north on the coast near Mombasa, and it's about 6 hours drive from Dar es Salaam, and that's where I was. And I was the head of a center with over 100 people, and I was supposed to lead them, and I was supposed to provide mentorship. I was supposed to develop the capacity of the center. So it came at the right time, because I needed that kind of training to be able first to position myself, to be able to kind of like develop my self-awareness, to be able to understand my strengths and weaknesses, and what actually I'm able to do and what I'm unable to do, what I'm able to accomplish efficiently, and what I may need support from others. So the SLP was able to equip me, was able to help me achieve that. So through ASLP, I was able to identify myself. I was able to characterize myself. Who am I? My working styles, my delivery style, and all those kind of things came out of ASLP. So that was great. ASLP also came at the time I was struggling to know, or to kind of define my trajectory. Did I really want to be a science administrator, a science bureaucrat, or a science leader? And through ASLP, I was able to determine what I really want to do. And ever since, I've never had any like kind of like messing around. I was able to define myself and put my career trajectory on a straight line. That I really wanted to become a science leader, and that's all I wanted. And the best way to deliver as a science leader was to focus on the leadership style I already knew I have, and develop it. SLP was also able to help me kind of like cement or concretize my strategy for capacity building. That in order for me to be successful as a science leader, there are things I need: training, mentorship of others, science communication, policy engagement. I mean, SLP actually opened the biggest Pandora box I never knew I had, and it put me in a clear map of the scientific world, and I was able to define myself and my career trajectory. I remember the South African lady from Western Cape University. Oh, she's still a friend of mine. And we're painting together, exchanging our paints, and at the end of the painting, Tim took the paints and said, "This is what you're going to do. Just piece your paint and kill it." The moment he did to his, the whole class went on burst, and we're like, "No, you cannot do that." And that was the key message. Like when someone is trying to develop something, someone is trying to talk, give them a chance and try to understand that the fact that they are able to talk, they have taken some time to develop their thinking, to develop whatever you are saying now. Even if it doesn't make sense to you, please don't destroy it. That has had a very significant impact in my life and my career since then. The other thing was the listening to someone for 5 minutes without saying a word. In my life, I had never had a chance to allow someone to speak for 5 minutes without interrupting and without cutting him or her off. Generous listening, I think. So I was one of those people who are not generous listeners. I remember my partner, she's also from South Africa, a professor, I think in Cape Town, a brilliant scientist. She was giving her my story, she giving me her story, and I gave hers. Oh, by the time we finished our story, we hugged for like a minute and we were in tears, and I mean, that impacted my life. So I can give so many stories, but to be honest, ASLP has had huge impacts in my life and my career, and I say this with strong conviction, and I've always actually advised my people, my colleagues, my friends, that if there is anything you can actually take and not regret is SLP program. And that's why last year, I think the year before, was it last year? The year before, we organized one of our mini SLP training, and we were planning to organize many more. I do not find actually any that has not had strong applications in my life. So I gave the compassionate listening, I don't know how to say the painting, science communication, mentorship, policy engagement. We are now running actually one of the biggest projects in Tanzania, where we have the strongest engagement component and the policy and translation. So, I can talk forever about the impact of SLP in my science career, in my life. But the biggest I should say is to be able or to enable me to define myself and decide my career path as a science leader. Because initially, everything was blurred to me. It was blurred to me because I didn't know how to make a distinction between someone who is in administration in a science institution and someone who is a science leader. But I now know, and I can tell you, I've applied that, and I've been supporting my Minister of Health and even WHO to be as a key resource person the moment I started to develop myself as a science leader. So lots of impact. Who is a science leader? Not only in an African context, it's actually a huge problem, because after SLP, I was able to make a distinction, a clear demarcation of who is a science leader and who is leading a science or research or scientific organization. quite often in Africa, we mix both. And basically those in administration or leadership, we tend to think they are science leaders. But through my training with ASLP and others in leadership, it became clear to me that a science leader is someone who is capable of, who is an expert in a particular niche, in a particular field, and has the ability to support or to provide, basically I should say, technical guidance or technical recommendation. I can give an example. At the moment, I'm considered a science leader in malaria, in particular in the area of drug resistance. So in the ministry, whenever they have any issue, they consult me, and my technical opinion is considered really strongly. Even at WHO level and other big organizations, and even at the global level. So to me, a science leader has to be not only an African science leader, but a global science leader. So at the moment, I actually have been striving not to be a science leader, but rather to be an African science leader, but rather a global science leader, because we are global citizens and we need to save our globe. So actually the focus shouldn't be a science leader in Africa, it should be a science leader in our areas of expertise. The biggest message for me is that as science leaders, and more so from Africa, we need to solve the problems facing our people. It makes me very sad with my education, my skills, and the sacrifice the community I grew up made to be at this stage, and I cannot provide any tangible or any meaningful solution to the problems they are facing, be climate change, be health, be water and sanitation, whatever kind of problems the communities are facing, we African scientists have an obligation to solve them. That's one. Two, in order for us to develop and actually make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to live a good life, science leaders need to embrace innovation. We are not going to make it if we keep shying away from innovation. The innovation I'm talking about is not necessarily like we should now be dying to make robots, to make whatever, or to make satellites. Let's use innovations to solve the simple problems. Like in South Africa, you are in a city where people don't have sufficient water. You understand? And you are also joining members of the community who never had an opportunity to go to school to cry that you don't have water. But you already know that you can solve the problem. Let's go ahead and solve the problem. Look at some simple innovations to make sure that you first get water and your neighbors get water. The moment you solve that problem at the smallest unit, at the smallest level, you will get an impetus, the motivation to solve it for the bigger community. And the third thing for the third African scientists and the ASLP, we cannot be proud that we have done our part if most of our people are still poor. You and I have an obligation to pull people out of poverty, and we should do that without hesitation. There are so many ways we can do. First, let's pull our relatives, our family members out of poverty. The moment we finish that, once you have a mission, one mission done, you start another mission. So once we pull, let's say, family members out of poverty, immediately you as a family you will start pulling other members of the out of poverty. So that's how we can do it. Amazing. This is a well thought and strong program. If you look at it carefully, you will realize that people who thought about it, Bernard and the group, really were up to the missions or the things I mentioned, solving critical problems. This is not a program that can be developed by light minds. This is a program that required very, very strong and brilliant minds. So it's one of the best, amazing programs I have